Lia Tortilla presents.
Hey guys, it's me, Lia Tortilla, and welcome back for another tasty treat. This recipe that I will be sharing with you today has been in my family for over 30 years. It started with my grandmother and my grandfather, and they passed it on to my mum and my aunties, and then they passed it on to me and my cousins. To get this recipe, I actually had to message my cousin Steve, you're right there Steve, and his mum, my auntie Lana, to get this recipe. And when he gave it to me, it was a photo of the original recipe that my granddad had written out that was typed on a typewriter, which I thought was quite cool, you know, a bit vintage. And this recipe is so old that it's actually still in ounces, but I'm too lazy to change and convert the measurements, so I'm sticking to the ounces because luckily for me, my scales actually still do ounces, so that's great. So if you don't work in ounces, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to, do the conversions yourself. But thank you, Auntie Lana and Cousin Steve. Lia Tortilla is now going to show the world how to make liver Italian. To start, you're going to need to grab yourself a big old frying pan. This recipe requires a total amount of 4 ounces of butter. To begin with, you use half that amount of butter and melt it in your frying pan. And then to that butter, we're going to add 2 chopped onions, 3 cloves of chopped garlic, and 6 chopped spring onions. And then we're going to stir this and let it fry for about 3 to 4 minutes. You know, the best thing about this dish is that you can get it ready the night before, and then the next day, just pop it in the oven an hour before serving, and it's ready. No fuss whatsoever. Now we're going to add 4 ounces of chopped mushrooms. And then you want to keep stirring occasionally for another 4 minutes or so. I don't know whether or not you've noticed, but I've actually got this on quite a low heat because you don't want to cook this quickly. Especially when it comes to frying the liver, and that's because you don't want to brown the outside of the liver and then leave the inside raw. You want it to be cooked evenly all the way through. Okay, so about 4 minutes has passed and my mushrooms are nice and soft, so I'm just going to transfer this mix into my casserole dish. So once you've transferred your onions and mushrooms into a casserole dish, we're going to use the remaining butter and put that in our pan that we were just using. We're going to let that melt a little bit. And then here I've got some thinly sliced lamb's liver. With this recipe you have to make sure it's lamb's liver. And we're going to add this to our remaining butter in the pan on a low heat. So what you want to do is cook the liver until it's lightly brown on each side. And then once you've done that, we're going to transfer this into our casserole dish. There we go, it's nice and lightly brown on each side. Transferring over to the casserole dish now. So now we put this pan back on the heat and we're going to add a tin of chopped tomatoes, or Auntie Lana says you can use passata if you wish. Then we're going to add half a tube of tomato puree. I don't know why, but I always forget to pierce the end of this. So we want half a tube of tomato puree. Just going to give this a little stir. Then to the tomatoes in the pan, we're going to add 4 liquid ounces of beef stock. Then here I have half a tablespoon of red wine vinegar. And then you want to add 1/4 teaspoon of table salt and then half a teaspoon of cracked black pepper. And then we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of thyme and 1/4 teaspoon of basil. Both of these are dried, and we're going to add a singular bay leaf. But don't worry, as always, my ingredients and the measurements will be in the description below. And then of course we're going to give this mixture a lovely stir, and we're going to bring it to the boil. As you can see, my sauce is boiling, so I'm going to transfer this into the casserole dish. And then once all of that is in the casserole dish, you're going to give it a good old stir. And then we're going to place the lid on it and put it in the oven at 180 degrees for 50 to 60 minutes. And then it's ready to serve. But first, before I put the lid on and put it in the oven for an hour, I'm going to add my mum's tweak to this recipe. I've got 2 sliced courgettes here that I'm just going to place on top of the liver before I put it in the oven. So here's just a little sneak peek before I pop it in the oven. I have to say, I think that was one of the easiest dishes I've ever had to prepare. So, at the end of this video, I will show you how I served it, and I will go and enjoy my dinner, because that's what this is. This is my dinner.
3, 2, 1. Would you look at that? I served my liver Italian with creamy mashed potatoes, but if you prefer, it goes really well with rice. Thank you for watching Lia Tortilla. Don't forget to give this video a like, give this video a share, leave me a comment because I love to hear what you have to say. And if you really like what I do, then subscribe to my channel and I will see you next week for more tasty treats.